Welcome back. Let's get this.
There you go. Welcome back. The Aeronauts Windlass continues. These are a bunch of action-packed chapters ahead of us.
Yes, we're going to go through chapters 8 through 19. So, kind of random, but holy crap, this book picked up pretty quick. Something just almost felt like it went from 0 to 100.
Yes, in a good way. I think
Yeah.
Jim Butcher does a pretty good job at doing action. And I think he did good at the perspective switches a few times here. I think he did good at like tying them together.
Yes, I really like the way he switched around perspective in this one.
And making them flow. So the action begins with Grimm and Bayard. They are walking through the alleys kind of talking, and they get attacked by something. We don't know what it is. It's like a mystery monster.
Yeah.
That makes a really weird squealing noise and attacks them and claws them up, beats up Grimm pretty good. But not so much Bayard. It seems like they're after Grimm specifically. But then they fight him off. But turns out Grimm was poisoned by whatever
Yes, he
happened.
did get injured, but it didn't seem like it was bad enough injury. But yeah,
So he held up his arm, and his arm got kind of cut up. Didn't really seem like super life-threatening, but apparently whatever attacked him was venomous.
Yes.
Poisonous. And then he wakes up in a strange location with strange people.
Some very interesting and definitely strange people.
We get our first meeting of etherealists. Etherealists in this world, in the Aeronauts Windlass world, are people who can control and manipulate ether, I guess. And how you can think of it. So it's like the energy that the crystals produce. And we see that showcased later on in these chapters, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But we meet Folly, and Folly is a woman, and she is the apprentice of Ephrenus Ferris.
His name is it's just silly, but I love it.
And they're both mad, crazy. And it's like a common symptom of an etherealist. One guy, Grimm's kind of like, what's going on? Because Folly, like each etherealist has a different thing that's like off about them with their madness. And Folly's specific one is she can't talk directly to people. She has to talk to crystals that she holds. And that's what she's doing when she's talking to Grimm. And Grimm's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And she keeps talking to the crystals. He's like, what's going on? And then she says to the crystals, like, he's kind of stupid. Like, why does he keep asking all these questions? And then he's like, you're an etherealist, aren't you? And she's like, yep. And he's like, oh, this makes sense now. And then she says she's going to go get her master. And her master is older, and he has a few things that are crazy about him. Won't get into everything, so we'll spoil some of the story. But the first thing we know about him is when he's coming back, he's hearing a loud thud on the door. And then, like, the doorknob jiggles. He's like, confounded thing, Folly. So, like, he's unable to open doors for whatever the heck reason. He just can't do it. It's kind of funny. It's like throughout the book, he just kind of like there's one part where it's just super funny. It's like they tell him to go off on his own to do something, and he's like, but I can't. There's doors. So he's like totally crazy. And apparently whatever abilities he has, though, he was able to heal Grimm. So we don't really know much about the powers at this point, but even later on it doesn't really explain how he's able to cure the poison, but he's able to.
Yes.
And there's a quote here I thought that was really funny, just how he said it. But he says, whatever beastie it was tried to eat you, it left a good many dangerous structures behind in your blood. Quite rude, sir. Quite rude and most unfair.
Yeah. I love when stories have... This is almost like this on the same level for me as like a fun or silly like sidekick. Like Raoul or Ambot is who I was thinking of. Or, some funny little thing. Like these guys kind of fill the same genre. Like, I think they're like the silly characters that when you read about them, it's not like this super serious thing, but you kind of just can enjoy and laugh when you read about them.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And Ferris definitely has that. And he has weird quirks about him. Like him and Folly kind of talk about Grimm a couple times like he's not there. And then when Grimm questions it, he's like, are you Ferris asks Folly, he's like, are you sure that he's okay? Let me examine him. But to examine him, he leaves the room. And so Grimm starts to stand up, and then you hear him yell through the door, quit wiggling about. How am I supposed to help you if you keep moving? And she's like... She like stops, and then he's like, "Are you having a bowel movement?" I'm like, "Why are you sitting there like that?" So, it's like hard to keep up with him. Like, you don't know what he's gonna do.
It was so confusing, but
happen,
it was different and confusing than like the Shadow of Windlass, for example. But that was really funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, then the story kind of switches back to Gwen, and unless you have anything else you want to mention about chapter 8. So the chapter 9 is a chapter that highlights that Gwen is my least favorite character in the entire book. I think Jim has done an interesting thing with Gwen, because a lot of times in stories when the main or one of the main characters is a noble person, they're usually different than the other noble people. They're more like common folk. They're not haughty and rude and arrogant and think that they're above all and are the answer to everything. And Gwen is definitely, she's the main character, so she's like one of the heroes of the story, one of the good guys, but she has the mannerisms of a classic
she's still
bad guy noble person.
Yeah.
She's just a total bitch. And I freaking hate her in this chapter because they're like getting ready for the duel, and she's still being all weird about that. But then like they go to this place to eat, and some random old guy like bumps into her and doesn't say excuse me or doesn't say sorry, and she takes it. She is like,
she goes just as crazy. Yeah, maybe a little more crazier than Reginald.
I think just as crazy, like a little more crazy, like just same level of just like.
Because at least Reginald was insulted and stuff by Bridget, but this old guy was just literally like minding his business, accidentally ran into her, and she's like, "Let's fight to the death."
I know, and she's like, "Excuse," and she's like goes totally crazy, and Benedict is like tries to stop her. He's like, "When?" She's like, "No, I need to know what your name is," and the guy's like, "Why?" She's like, "I need to know what house would let such an unmannered lout walk around." And then it turns out that he is the Spirarch, which in this book is the equivalent to the king of all the land. And Gwen didn't even freaking know. And so once he does that, she's like totally humiliated. And I freaking loved it. It was awesome.
I 100% agree.
I was like, awesome. Yes, Jim, yes. Thank you for making a character such a ninny and then handing it to her.
Oh, yes. It was very satisfying. Yes. And I loved how her cousin was even like, I'm just going to let you burn.
I know, because Benedict knew who it was, and he was trying to stop her. But she's like, you don't look anything like your portraits. And he's like, well, I was younger when those were taken.
Yeah. And
so then the spider kind of has a conversation that Bridget and Benedict and Gwen. He kind of comes up that there's a duel, and he's kind of talking about it a little bit. And then
was Bridget there?
Yeah, all three of them were there.
I do like the Spirarch too. Sounds like my kind of like nobleman person, the ones there who seem wise and humble and all the good stuff. And
yeah, so that then he went back to like that's like the classic. If the nobleman's a hero, then that means he's different than other noblemen.
Yeah,
which the Spirarch definitely fits that mold of kind of storytelling.
I wonder
if fits like the old wise guy who's seen a lot and maybe is trying to like he's just be more wise rather than like snooty and arrogant. But
I wonder if Jim is going for like he wants Gwen to be that better than the average noble person type of thing, but he is not just putting her automatically there. Like she's kind of there, or at least she's can sort of be in that direction. Like she might have done a bad job, but she tried to help Bridget, so maybe she's going to work up to be a character that is a noble character, but is not a pain in the butt like Reginald.
Then they leave the Spirarch. He tells them he's going to go to the duel, and then it's time for the duel. And they make it there. There's a few things kind of happen. Roel kind of gets offended a little bit and wants to attack Reginald because Reginald's a douchebag.
Yeah,
and right when they're about to duel, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say like Reginald called him a scavenger or something.
Yeah,
and that was highly offensive to cats.
Apparently.
Even though they're totally scavengers.
My cats are scavengers.
Exactly. I was thinking of your cat Loki when he walks through the kitchen and ooh, it's dead.
But the duel does not happen. Because right when they're about to start, like they're literally lined up, Bridget and Reginald are lined up. They're like the moderator's about to be like, go. But then the air raids sign go off. And they're like, we're under attack. Which I actually really like that Jim interrupted the duel this way.
I did
think
too.
There are a ton of stories that are like, I don't know if the trope is the right word or just overused of inexperienced hero beats arrogant person who has been training in combat and fighting his whole entire life. And it also saved from having, if Bridget won, having Reginald's family like have some backlash from that. It's just she lost. And so I think,
and Reginald was like poking more at her. Like once he got to the place,
it's obvious
duel,
no matter
he
the
was
result of the
being
duel,
more-
Reginald wasn't going to let it slide. He was going to turn into full on Draco Malfoy and just do everything he could to ruin Bridget.
Mhm.
And with his status and his family, it would be easy. He wouldn't even have to try, but he would try, and he would just ruin everything. He would ruin Bridget's life 100% completely.
Yeah, literally.
So I think Butcher does a really good job of avoiding all that at the same time while building up the suspense of being like, because for a few chapters before this, like Bridget's preparing and she's like trying, she's like freaking out. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, they're like telling her like, well, sometimes people don't know how to stop and people die. So she's like, oh, Jesus, freaking Louise. And then, yeah, but luckily that is avoided because they're under attack.
And they're caught fairly off guard.
100% off guard.
They
don't know.
They mentioned that it's been 20 years since the last like air raid.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and the air raid is executed perfectly. We learn later in the book how that was possible, but right now it's kind of just a full-on surprise attack. And right after the air raid's signed, we're kind of switched back to Grimm's perspective, and he's currently in the shipyard, and he doesn't hear the air raids, but he hears the sound of a ship that's diving, and he's experienced enough that he knows what Auroran ship it is. I forget what he names it, but he knows which one it is. And then right after he hears that, then he hears the air sirens, and then the ship dives past the shipyards, blows up a bunch of stuff, does a bunch of things. Everyone's freaking out. The fleet mobilizes, but Grimm happens to notice like a floating something that's coming down and knows, and his experience tells him, and he knows that is from a piece of equipment used to essentially parachute.
Yeah. I really love how Jim is going through two sides of the story on completely different sides of the spectrum, where he's got like Bridget and Gwen and even Benedict, who are not very experienced, especially when it comes to like actual combat. But then like you get to Grimm and he's not only so experienced that it's like watching Sherlock Holmes just piece stuff together. Like he sees that thing, so he knows what it is. He knows the sound of the ship, and then he notices that the ship shooting up the place is doing some damage, but nothing like that crazy. So he's automatically just like, there's something else going on here. I would have been like, we're gonna die.
But he keeps his head, even though the fleet's mobilizing. He's like, that's what they want. The Aurorans are doing this as a distraction. What's actually happening is that they dropped troops inside the spire, and now all of our soldiers are on the ships going to fight what they think is an air battle. That's not happening. So he rallies his men, and he's like, we gotta defend the spire, which is cool, because even though he's like a privateer, he was disgraced. He was dishonorably discharged unrightfully, but he is still loyal, and he still has integrity, and he's able to say, like, I'm going to help the people of Albion, and that doesn't have any bearing on, I didn't have anything to do with the a-holes and corruption that made me have to leave.
Yeah. And it sounds like he definitely was not, like, discharged from their military or whatever because he actually did something wrong. It was just political BS that he took the fall for.
Exactly. So he gathers his men, and they're like, let's go. And then this is like the rapid flicker of action, which is I really love when authors can really bring this together, because right after that, it switches back to Bridget, Benedict, and Gwen. And even though the shooting was on the landing docks, there's still some felt things, and I think it almost sounds like there are some shots near where they are, because things start to collapse. There's like, because the spire itself is made of some sort of material that's practically unbreakable, but they've built up around it. Like, they've built wood structures, they've built masonry, and that's the stuff that's collapsing. That's the stuff that's falling down. It's kind of creating chaos, and it's actually good to see this in characters, because, you know, their first reaction is, get the heck out of here. Like, Bridget's like, I gotta go find my dad. Benedict's like, I gotta get you to safety, Gwen. But then Gwen actually kind of comes through, and she's like, no, we're we're in the guard. Yes, we're cadets, but we're in the Spire Guard. We need to stay and we need to help.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, yeah.
Which is, when she does stuff like that, then I'm like, maybe Gwen will turn out to be not quite the...
Yeah. So you can see, like, she has, like, the characteristics of a good person kind of coupled with the upbringing and arrogance of being so powerful that you say poop and people say what color.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something else besides saying jump and how high.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that one too.
But as they're helping people, they're specifically helping the second of Reginald. He kind of got trapped into some things, and as they're doing that, a group of what appear to be Spire guards walk up, and they kind of talk, and then they.
I was impressed that they were able to piece this part together, because I definitely would have just been like, yeah, thanks for the help.
Yeah, because what's suspicious about it is the attack happened like minutes ago. There's this fully armed and prepared patrol coming through, and they're carrying like a crap ton of explosives. And they're like, at first they're like, oh, thank goodness you're here. Like, we need help. And then that quickly turns to,
yes.
And then Gwen doesn't hesitate, and good thing she was right in this case, because she just lifts up her gauntlet and blasts the head of the officer.
Yeah.
And kills him. Just straight up kills him dead. And then
she's
that's
able to get them by surprise and give them the advantage to survive this
for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Because that chaos kind of ensues. So we get that kind of how chapter 12 and grows into chapter 13 is there's like a lot of confusion, a lot of fighting that ends up with Bridget being held by her throat and with a knife by a warrior born named Syriaco. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
That's what I said, Syriaco.
And he's a warrior born, and he's pretty much holding her, and he's like, okay, if you guys don't stop, I'm going to kill this broad. And then Gwen points her gauntlet at the explosives, and she's like, I'm going to blow you all to hell.
Yeah.
So they kind of go off on like this weird standoff.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to kill Bridget, and Gwen's like, I'm going to kill everybody. And everyone's like,
it's a pretty funny standoff, because they're both kind of just like, well, we're just going to wait here and see who gets reinforcements first. And that was the standoff.
That's essentially exactly what's happening. And then back to Grimm. Him and his men have been running for a little bit. They're kind of out of breath, but they finally start to hear fighting. And they go towards it, and they find this mansion, this nobleman mansion is under attack. They don't know it at the time, but this is I think they find out, but this is the Lancaster compound, I guess you can call it, or their vattery is under attack. And so Grimm decides to help, but they set up a nice little trap, I guess you can call it. They're pretty straightforward plan. One group's going to circle around, and the other group's going to charge in, and the other group's going to come in.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see I guess I'll call it inexperience of Grimm's men in this scene.
Yeah, and he does mention it, like when he's ordering, when he realizes that the air raid and the sky battle is a ruse. He orders his men to become armed, and they're all like, "We're privateers, not soldiers." And so he kind of like
really
expects that they're not
do.
gonna like. His whole plan is to hold off until the real soldiers show up.
Yeah, which I like how Jim Butcher set this up, because he showed in the opening sequence where we meet Grimm that Grimm's crew is they're dang good sailors. They know their business. They're able to make decisions in microseconds in the middle of a battle that's super chaotic. Like, you're strapped to the ground, G-forces are crazy. They're able to do some pretty impressive stuff. Like, they're at the top of their game of being sailors. But Grimm even mentioned, like, that's not close combat. That's not getting in someone's face with a sword or a gun. It's like operating a machine, essentially.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes through, because they charge the position, and they have a hard time of it. I think 10 just right off the bat just like die.
Yeah, it's like they have a few seconds of surprise again, but then the Auroran troops switch around their weapons and just fire on Grimm's men and just drop a few of them pretty quick.
Yeah, it's also Grimm also notes that it's obvious that the Aurorans are waiting for something, most likely reinforcements, and I think it's kind of meant to clue the reader into that these men at the Lancaster are waiting for the men with the explosives. And so, but anyways, Grimm attacks them, and their plan does work. They're able to defeat the Aurorans, but like barely. Like, Grimm and his men are like fighting them, but they're being pushed back. They're like obviously not winning. And then he sends Creedy, his first officer, his first mate, around, and he comes in kind of, and their numbers overwhelm them. Like, there's like, I don't know, 40 or 50.
That makes me think of Terry Goodkind's book, The Sword of Truth, because I think that's how it was, where like Jagang, the Dreamwalker from the old world, he had like tons of men at his disposal. They weren't as skilled as like the people of the New World and stuff like that, but it's just a flop on that story that made me think of it.
Yeah, for sure. And then in the aftermath, Esther Brooke is there. He was the moderator of the duel. He's kind of doesn't really play much of a part in the story beyond this. And they're kind of talking and they're kind of sharing like, yeah, I think there's more going on. Like, we're gonna go figure out what's going on. And then Roll shows up. And I don't remember if anyone there speaks cat or he's just able to somehow tell them.
It was Esther Brooke who could he understood barely a little bit of cat.
Yeah. Basically, it comes down to Roll says, "Follow me. There's more Auroran soldiers this way." And so Grimm gathers up some men and then starts to head out. And then we flash back to Bridget and Benedict and what's her name? Gwen.
I think this was kind of interesting. This chapter was interesting to read because it was just like this little thing between like the little cadets and these assumedly more experienced Auroran soldiers, people, the military, I think they called them. But I thought it was
Auroran Marines.
Marines. That's what I was thinking of. But I thought it was just funny to sit there and read them, like Bridget trying to like, well, you can't have the bombs because of all these different situations that I know about, and like it was funny to me just because, yeah, she's a cadet and she's been working in the meat vattery, and like, what do you know?
Yeah, it's kind of just more of you kind of just get a little bit of character building, and this is in chapter 16. You kind of learn more about Syriaco. It kind of sets him up that he's going to come back later. He's going to kind of be maybe one of the main bad guys. And Grimm and his men do say they do show up. They don't. I don't remember if they kill all the Aurorans or chase them off. Some escape. Syriaco is one of them that escapes. They run off. But they kind of at that point is like the days. Like this is like, okay, like we save these people. What's going to happen next? And that's kind of like the end of chapter 16. I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention about chapter 16. And then chapter 17 is where we get to see, or by at least heavily implied, the power of a fully trained etherealist. Because we switch back, now we're in Folly's perspective. And she has a dream/vision where she somehow intercepts some sort of communication to something from somewhere to somehow. Yeah. It seems like a big deal. Like Ferris is kind of like, woo, that is a big deal. And he's kind of like saying, like, this is the end of the beginning. He's like saying all these things. He said that earlier to Grimm, but it's obviously something's happening. And it's obvious that Ferris knows more about maybe what's going on, because they get attacked by Auroran Marines. Like a group of Marines specifically went to their place to attack them, but they made the mistake of attacking with gauntlets. And since we're in Folly's perspective, the master tells Folly to close her eyes. So we don't know what happens, but the men fire their gauntlets, and then Folly hears screams and then smells burning flesh. And then the master says, okay, you can open them. And everyone that came, I think there's like 4 or 5 guys dead, and Ferris is completely untouched. So, and she even mentioned, she's like, they were stupid because they brought gauntlets to fight an etherealist. And so, like, their powers are somehow tied to being able to do something with the crystals, or somehow. So.
And we did get a little bit before he had her close her eyes when he was going to kill them. But before, like, they used their gauntlets, and he used the crystals on his staff or whatever, and like absorbed all of the energy and made them heat up so much that it was like really burning those guys up, and they were screaming and had to rip off the thing. So yeah, it definitely is like, it's like trying to take on Thor with lightning. He just absorbs it.
And then he tells Folly, he's like, hey, pack your stuff. We're going to go meet an old friend. But first we have to go talk to the Spire-Ark. So
yes, and they want Grimm. He wants Grimm.
Yeah, so it's all coming together.
Yes.
And then we jump back to Grimm. The fighting lasted about 12 hours. And now Grimm is talking to Albion, who is the Spire-Ark of Spire Albion. And he's the one that Gwen had the little run-in with. And they basically have this conversation where Albion is like, listen, you kept your head. You did a really good job. I need you and your crew to do a secret mission for me. And Grimm's like, no way, Jose.
Yeah.
I am my own man, a free spirit. And then the Albion's like, I'll fix your shit. And Grimm's like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
I love that part. I think you're a son of a bitch.
The mission seems relatively simple. He just needs to take a group of people from Habel Morning down to Landing, which is a different Habel a few stories down. So it's like, and then kind of make sure they're okay, help them where needed, escort them, kind of help them out a little bit. So it seems like a super easy mission to get priceless repairs done on his ship. And like apparently no strings attached, because the Albion's very clear. He's like, this is for this one job. Like, I'm not going to use this to force you to work for me. You can like leave if you want after this, but I have a feeling that you won't.
Yeah. And
then Grimm's like, I bet, like, yeah, bring it on.
We'll see where that goes. If he actually does just be like, thanks for the stuff, see ya.
Yeah. So we're kind of setting the stage. We're like, okay, so like there's like the surprise attack. There's obviously probably going to be like a big war. The for some reason the Spire Arc, the king, is sending a secret mission down to Landing, which is in his own territory, so we don't know what's going on, but that kind of seems like that's going to be the stage. The bulk of our story is going to be in Landing. And we even in chapter 19, where we're ending today, we get a bad guy perspective,
which is super interesting.
We meet Major Reginald Espira, and we kind of get his thought process, and he kind of mentions that he has like men that are landed, and they're trying to gather all his men together, and they're going to do some like secret ops crap. And we also meet, I forget her name, but we meet a crazy lady.
Yeah, she seems crazy.
She's like ultra obsessed with manners and being mannerly correct, and Espira's pretty afraid of her, it seems. But we kind of get that. We kind of get this, I guess, foreboding feeling. Like, it seems like the bad guys are definitely have the upper hand. Like, they're prepared. They've been planning this, and everything is going smoothly.
Yes.
The only thing that didn't work about their plan is that they wanted to blow up Lancaster Manor, but weren't able to. But everything else pretty much went exactly to plan. So that's kind of the stage. So we got this crazy battle scene opened up. That's obviously like grounds for war, and now we got.
Oh, we do get that mentioned. It's like
mission.
Someone was having a meeting about like they're
announcing
like open war with Aurora.
Yeah, like it's guaranteed. It's just not official, but it's like it's pretty obvious. Like attack like this isn't gonna go unanswered, But that's where we are. So now we have a mystery afoot. We're gonna see if Grimm and hasn't mentioned yet who's going to go on this secret mission with Grimm, but it's probably pretty obviously going to be Bridget, Benedict, and Gwen are probably going to be part of it at least.
Yeah, or something.
And so we're going to see if Grimm and crew can stop the Albions, whatever they're trying to do. See if they can, or not the Albions, the Aurorans. We're going to see if Master Ferris can help or whatever the crap he's doing. We don't even know what he's doing.
I quite enjoyed these chapters because they took me all over the place, and this book is going in a direction that I wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
When we started getting like Gwen and Bridget's perspective, I was kind of thinking this would just be like a classic, cadets training and then going to war. But they've never really had. I mean, Bridget has trained, but I don't feel like they've had actual like class. They probably have. It just Jim doesn't include all of that in here now.
It's kind of, like, I think it kind of alludes to it, like, because Bridget mentions that she's not very good with the gauntlet. So, like, they've had, like, it kind of seems like they're just going through basic training, essentially. So, like, they've done, like, the physical training, they've practiced some other stuff. But, yeah, definitely not.
But, like, this is not, them going through cadet training and becoming guards is not necessarily the focus of this story, which is what I was expecting. I was also just expecting, just by reading the little summary about the book and seeing like the cover of it, I was totally expecting this to be just like a space pirate type of book. It's gonna be about following. I assume on the cover that's Grimm who's like holding onto the ship.
Most likely.
So this book is going all over the place, and I'm loving it.
That's pretty good.
I'm excited to see where things are gonna go.
Thanks for joining us. It was a quick episode today. But those action chapters, a lot's going on. They go quick. So does this episode.
Next week, we'll probably get into chapters 20 through 29 or so. And we'll see what happens, how this act of war progresses, and where everyone's going to land up.
Amen.
We'll catch you all next week.
Yep. It's over.